Welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to talk about the new moon solar eclipse happening on 24th or 25th of October. The date can vary depending on your location. So we are going to discuss the energies of this new moon solar eclipse, what this eclipse might bring for us, and I'm going to focus primarily on Western astrology. I will mention a little bit about Vedic astrology and what this eclipse might mean in Vedic astrology towards the latter half of the video. So let's get started. Now, this eclipse is falling in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is right here. You can see this, that's Scorpio, and it's a new moon solar eclipse. A new moon is when the sun and the moon are together. That's the sun and that's the moon, and they are together at 2 degrees of Scorpio. This happens about once in 28 days or so, right? A new moon. And with a new moon, new energies come into our life, right? It's a new beginning. It's the new lunar month. So that happens every 28 days or so. But an eclipse happens much less often. An eclipse is when we have the new moon, in this case, next to the south node, Ketu, right? That's when we have an eclipse, or next to the north node, Rahu. So this eclipse is a south node eclipse. It's conjunct Ketu. So this eclipse is about new energy coming in, new beginnings that are karmic and fated and destined. Because when it's an eclipse, right, karma gets activated, destiny gets activated, right? Events that are meant to happen start to happen. And that's because the nodes, Ketu, right, and Rahu, are nodes of the moon, and they are karmic. They're the most karmic points in a chart, right? So eclipses bring out these events that are destined, that are fated, that are karmic, that are meant to happen. Eclipses can also bring events that have been meaning to happen, but for some reason they have not happened, right? So this, you can say, is a supercharged karmic new beginning, right? Destined new beginning. Now, another difference between a new moon and an eclipse is that we work on the energy that comes in with an eclipse for about 28 days, right? And then we have another new moon, and then we work on the new energy. But an eclipse energy stays with us for months, right? 6 months at least. So this new beginning that's happening is going to be something that we will be working on for the next 6 months or so. Another thing I'd like to mention is that this is the first of 2 eclipses, right? We have another eclipse in the month of November, around 14-15 days after this eclipse. So in between this eclipse and the next one, these 14 days are extremely karmic, extremely destined, extremely fated, right? Events can take place that were meaning to happen but have not happened for some reason. And eclipses, right, feel intense. They feel intense because, they feel intense because Ketu and Rahu are nodes of the moon, and the moon in astrology is our emotions, right? It's representative of how we feel. So with the moon and Ketu right there, eclipses are these points that are emotionally charged, right? A lot goes on internally within ourselves. A lot goes on emotionally on eclipses. So just be mindful of that. And another thing with an eclipse is that if something is showing up, right, if certain events are taking place, if certain epiphanies, realizations are happening on an eclipse, it's better to take the proactive approach rather than the reactive approach, right? It's better to say, okay, this is coming up, okay, this happened, but I'm not going to react to it. Sit on that energy, imbibe it, think on it, and then, when you feel ready, when you feel like, okay, I'm not reacting, but I'm being proactive, then take steps. So that's what an eclipse is, and this eclipse is an important one. It's an extremely important one. First of all, it is in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign that changes everything, right? It's the sign that changes something from the inside out. It's the sign of where the biggest transformations, biggest changes take place. So this new beginning that is karmic and fated and destined is one that can change a lot, is an extremely transformative one. And before I move on, I also want to mention that Ketu here is known for letting things go, right? In Vedic astrology, Ketu is known to be an ascetic, right? Letting go of the material world. That's what Ketu is. What this means is that this new beginning that is karmic and destined and fated can require us to let go of things, right? Can require us to close things out. It can require us to end certain things, right? And whatever that letting go is, whatever that ending is, it's extremely transformative, extremely, extremely transformative, Scorpio. And before we move on to the next thing, I also want to mention that Scorpio is also the sign that brings things up to the surface, right? It reveals information, it reveals emotions. If something's been hidden, buried deep within, whether they're emotions, whether it's information, whether it's something else, Scorpio will say no, out it comes, right? And what that means is that this eclipse can bring up a lot of hidden emotions, it can bring up a lot of hidden information, it can bring up a lot of hidden stuff, right? And it can be very transformative. The next thing I want to touch upon is the fact that Venus is right next to this eclipse. It's conjunct this eclipse almost exact, right? 2 degrees, 2 degrees. And Venus in astrology represents our projects, right? Our business projects. It represents finances. It represents relationships. It represents how we feel about ourselves. So this eclipse can be a powerful one, and it can bring a lot of changes to maybe something to do with the business projects in our lives, or finances in our lives, or relationships, right? It can be very important for these Venus themes: business, finances, relationships, also self-worth, right? So that's an important thing to consider. And Scorpio here is, first of all, it is a financial sign. So finances personally and collectively can be highlighted, right? Scorpio here is also a relationship oriented sign, right? Libra is the legal relationships, and Venus, the ruler of Libra, is right next to this eclipse, which means relationships are extremely highlighted with this eclipse. But Scorpio is not the legal relationships, it's more the deep, intimate connections and bonds that we have, right? So that is also highlighted. And that's something that I wanted to share, right? So to sum it up so far, I would say that this eclipse is one that can change a lot, right? It can change a lot. It can change a lot connected to relationships, business, projects, self-worth, right? And these changes can require us to end things, to let go of things, to close out past chapters, right? Ketu, letting go. And transformation, information coming to the surface are extremely, extremely highlighted. Now, speaking of transformation, I want to mention that this transformation is something that we have been working on for a while, right? We may not feel it, we may not know it consciously, or we might even know it, but it's something that we've been working on for a while, right? And I say this because the month of October is the last month where Uranus and Saturn will make the 90-degree angle, right? Now, if you watched my previous videos, then I speak about this pretty often, but just to give you context, I will mention what this is. So Saturn here and Uranus here have been in this 90-degree configuration since last year, since 2021. And Uranus here is the planet of change, right? It brings change. And Saturn here is the planet of structures, the old structures that have been built. And a 90-degree angle, right? It represents this energy of pressure. Pressure, so much pressure that you say, no, I have to change my way of doing things. No, this is not working anymore. It's too much pressure. I need to do something different, right? So they've been in this 90-degree intense angle. And to put things more in perspective, this angle is not very common, right? The last time Uranus and Saturn made this angle was 20 years ago. So after 20 years, we are seeing this angle being formed. And what this angle, what this configuration is asking at a very basic level is, hey, it's time to change, right? It's time to let go of the old structures. It's time to let go of the old systems. It's time to let go of the old ways of doing things, Saturn, right? And it's time to set up the new. And for the past 1.5, 2 years, that's exactly what we have been doing. We have been trying to build these new structures. We have been trying to change the way we live. We have been trying to do all these things. And it's been difficult. It's been challenging, right? And now that intensity is high again, right? That pressure. So this, before we move on, this angle, right? It's not constant pressure. It's like waves, right? So there are certain times in the year that we feel a lot of pressure to make these changes, and then it kind of eases off a little bit. So right now, that pressure is very, very intense. It's at its peak. But the positive thing is that this is the last time we are feeling this intensity, right? Which means that this is the last step in all the work that we have been doing in an effort to change the old systems and set up our new life, right? And if you look at the world around us, if you look at what's been happening for the past 2 years, that's what we have been trying to do, right? We all have had to change how we do things, how we live our life, where we work, what we do for work, right? Everything has undergone a lot of change. And this is the point where we say, okay, you know what? Now I've kind of figured out this new system, right? I figured out this new way of living my life. So this is that point, and this transformation of the eclipse, right? Because I said this is a very transformative eclipse, is also connected to all the work that we have been doing in setting up these new changes, in breaking free from the old systems. This is an important milestone in that. And whatever work we've done for the past 1.5 years in setting up these new systems and breaking free from the old is at its peak now, and it's an important milestone in that transformation. July 31st of this year was another important step in that transformation process, right? And I say that because on July 31st this year, right, let me clean up the chart. It's a little messy, and then I'll show you. On July 31st of this year, we had Rahu and Uranus meeting up, right? And these two meet up once in 15 years. So what happened on July 31st is intense energies of change came in. Intense energies of change. But it's a slow cycle, 15-year cycle almost, right? So it takes time to build up. But the seeding of the change started back then, and the push and pull, you can say, because this energy of Saturn and Uranus is like a push and pull between the past and the future. So since July 31st, the past has been becoming a little weaker, and the change has become a little stronger. So that was an important milestone, July 31st. And now this is another important milestone in that transformation process. An extremely important one. You can say this is the final step in that Saturn-Uranus square, the work that we have been doing for the past 1.5 years, at least, finalizing itself. So this eclipse is a big one. It's all about transformation. It's all about changes. It's all about being willing to let go, right, of things. And these things can be connected to maybe a business, a relationship, how you feel about yourself, right? But it's a beginning, right? And these energies are energies that will show themselves, that will reveal themselves over the next 6 months. And information being revealed, emotions being revealed are extremely, extremely highlighted as well. So that's something that I wanted to mention. Now, let me see. Yeah. The next thing I want to mention is that Mars, okay, let's see. I want to talk about Mars a little bit. Mars right here is getting ready to go retrograde. Now, retrograde means that from the Earth's perspective, a planet will start to appear to move backwards, right? It's not really moving backwards, but from the Earth's perspective, it appears to move backwards. So Mars here is going to go retrograde, and Mars retrograde once in about 2 years, right? And when Mars retrogrades, we review things, we take a second look at things associated with Mars. And Mars is the planet of our energy, right? Mars is the planet of our drive. So wherever we've been putting in a lot of work, wherever we've been putting in a lot of energy since you can say the past month or so, that's the stuff that's going to come up for review with Mars retrograde, right? It's about reviewing things. It's about, fine-tuning things. Maybe you started something, for example, maybe you started a new project, right? And you've been working on it for a while. And now that Mars is going retrograde, what you might do is you say, this is how I wanted it, but now I'm learning that there's a better way to do it. Or these are the things that I missed out the first time around. I wanted to set up this project, right? So those kind of things happen, and you review, you make changes, you fine tune, and then you finally say, okay, now I'm ready. And Mars will be retrograde till Jan of 2023. And in March, it will get out of its retrograde zone. And what that means is that till Jan, we will be fine-tuning things. We will be taking a second look at things that we have been devoting a lot of our energy to, right? So if you know your charts, look for Gemini. Mars is retrograding between 8 and 25 degrees of Gemini. So that particular area of your life will come up for review. If you don't know your chart, right? If you don't know your chart, pay attention to where you've put in a lot of effort for the past month or so, right? Also, Mars was in Gemini between March and April, around April 2021, right? Around then. So certain themes from maybe April 2021 might come up for review as well, or things that have started to pick up pace in the past month or so again that are connected to April of 2021 can come up for review and, for fine-tuning. One thing to be mindful of with Mars retrograde is that since Mars is the planet of our energy, right, it can make us feel like slightly drained out, right? It can make us feel like this process, whatever I'm putting my energy to, is taking too long, it's too slow, I'm constantly going back and forth, so I don't feel like doing it, right? It can be that sort of energy as well, but that's what we are meant to do. We are meant to review, right? So if you're feeling like that lack of energy, that feeling of feeling drained, that feeling of, oh, this is just not working out, it's taking so long, these are the things to watch out for and power through with Mars retrograde. Now, Mars, even right now, is squaring Neptune, right? And as it goes retrograde, it will retrograde in a square to Neptune. Now, what this means is that Neptune here is the most spiritual planet, yes, but Neptune is also the planet of confusion, of fogginess, of hiding things in a way that's, that makes it difficult for us to see clearly. It's the planet of illusions and deception. And Mars is our energy, right? Mars says, hey, go forward, move forward. So what might be happening with with this eclipse and around end of October, when Mars is squaring Neptune, is this uncertainty setting in, right? This confusion, this fogginess setting in. How do I move forward? What's the best way of moving forward, right? That's in our personal lives. But the goal of Mars retrograde will be to see past this confusion, right? To figure out what's working, what's not working. And as Mars goes retrograde in a square to Neptune, the square to Neptune can bring another uncertainty about what's happening in the world around us, right? It can bring a certain confusion. It can bring up, like, is this really true or is this really true, right? Because Neptune is like that. It creates this, is this the real world or is this the real world? That sort of energy, right? So that can also happen on a global level. But Mars here is retrograding in Gemini. Now, Gemini is the sign of the media. It's the sign of communication. It's the sign of facts and information. So on a collective level, Mars here, when it retrogrades, will ask us to look at the facts. It will ask us to look at the information. It will ask us to look at the media. It will ask us to, reassess, reanalyze all these things. And Mars here used to rule Scorpio, right? Before Pluto was made the ruler of Scorpio, Mars used to rule Scorpio, right? And what does Mars do in that sense? Mars can also reveal things, right? Because it is associated with Scorpio. So what I'm trying to say is, on a collective level, if there is confusion, uncertainty, illusions, fogginess, deception, Mars here is going to dig really deep. It's going to dig really deep into the facts, into the information, into what's going on, what has been going on in the past, right? Like I said, Mars has been here in Gemini since August 20th. But Mars was in this placement last April as well, around last April. So these are the themes that are going to come up for review. And Gemini is important because, let me give you a little bit more context. Gemini is important because the North Node, right before it moved into Taurus, where it has been since Jan of this year, was in Gemini between May of 2020 and Jan of 2022, 18 months. The North Node was there, right? Which means a lot of the big themes of the past, between May 2020 and Jan 2022 were Gemini themes, right? So Mars here is going to bring up all those themes. So a lot of review of these things. And when Mars goes direct, it will square Neptune again, right? Because it will make the same angle. But once it moves on after its retrograde, and it will get out of its retrograde zone March 2023, that's when the review process, second look at things, information coming out, all that will complete itself. And March of 2023 is an extremely important month. It's an extremely important month because in March of 2023, we have two extremely important planets changing signs, right? Saturn here enters Pisces in March. Pluto here enters Aquarius in March. Now, Saturn here changes signs every 2.5, 3 years, right? And Pluto here has been in Capricorn since 2008, so it moves really slow, right? So in March, we'll have these big themes that we are seeing in our personal lives and in the world around us undergo a change. And that's when Mars here goes direct as well. And that's when, over the next 6 months, we will be doing this work of letting things go, of transforming, connected to the Saturn Uranus square that has been going on for the past 1.5 years, right? So to sum it up, I would say the next 6 months are what just happened? Okay. Anyway, the next 6 months are extremely transformative, and this is the beginning point of that transformation. It is not just the beginning point of the transformation that is to come, it is also an important milestone in the transformation that we have been trying to make all of 2021, 2022, that became very intense in July of 2022, and now it's reaching an important milestone. With Mars going retrograde, we might, and in a square to Neptune, we still might be uncertain, we still might be unclear as to what's to come, but Mars will help us figure things out, and on a collective level, Mars will help us figure things out, connected to the information that's been out there, connected to the themes that have been so highlighted since 2020 May, right? April 2021, a lot of things will start to be reviewed, a lot of things will start to be rechecked, connected to information, facts, media, and whatever's been happening for the past 2 years plus. And that sums it up so far. Now let me see if I have missed out on anything. And yeah, another thing that I want to mention is that Jupiter is going to re-enter the sign of Pisces very, very soon, few days after this eclipse, in between eclipses actually. And Jupiter here will re-enter the sign of Pisces. Now, Jupiter in Pisces is very different from Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter in Aries is about new beginnings. It's about new starts. It's about starting a new 12-year cycle. And since May 10th of 2022, but now it's going to re-enter Pisces. Pisces is the end of the zodiac, right? Now we are going to go back to closing out past chapters, right? Go back to releasing everything that we have in our subconscious connected to the past. So certain themes will begin to shift as well when it comes to revisiting the past, closing out past chapters, closing out old wounds, that sort of thing. And Jupiter is getting closer and closer to Neptune, right? And in the sign of Pisces, Pisces is a water sign, so water becomes extremely highlighted with two big energies in Pisces. And the interesting thing is that both Jupiter used to rule Pisces, Neptune rules Pisces, a lot of emphasis on Pisces, water, closing out the past, spirituality, awakenings, that's extremely highlighted as well, and will be when Jupiter enters Pisces in a few days' time. So that's another thing I wanted to touch upon, and I think I have pretty much covered it all. Now I just want to mention, I think that sums it up. Now I'll talk about where this is happening in Vedic astrology. Now in Vedic astrology, this is happening in the sign of Libra, right? Libra, because in Vedic, the energies are a little bit behind, right? So this is happening in the sign of Libra, this eclipse, in the nakshatra of Swati. Now, nakshatras are also known as lunar mansions, and consider them like a mini sign, right? Because what a nakshatra or a lunar mansion essentially is a sign being divided up into smaller bits. And each nakshatra or lunar mansion has its own significance, much like each sign, right? Aries is different, Taurus different, Gemini. So even each nakshatra, each lunar mansion is different and signifies different things. So the nakshatra of Swati is a very independent nakshatra, right? It's about finding our independence, being independent, and finding our freedom, right? That's Swati. So those themes can be highlighted as well. And Rahu, the north node, rules, this is the north node, right? Let me mark it. This is the north node. And Rahu is the ruler of Swati Nakshatra. And Rahu in Vedic astrology is in Bharani Nakshatra. Bharani is the nakshatra that is a lot to do with destruction for the sake of creation, right? And Swati here I can't show it. I can't show it on this chart, but the nakshatra of Swati is known for transformation, right? Each lunar mansion in Vedic astrology has a particular power, Shakti, associated with it. And the Shakti or power of Swati Nakshatra is the power of transformation, right? So in Vedic also, with this interpretation of Swati being this nakshatra that is about the power to transform, transformation is extremely highlighted, right? And since Rahu, the North Node, the ruler of Swati, is in Bharani Nakshatra, where Uranus and the North Node conjuncted in July 31st. That theme of the work that we've been doing, right, destroying the old for the sake of the new, that's extremely highlighted as well. So, extremely potent eclipse for transformation, for things being revealed, and this transformation might require us to let go of things, right? Ketu, the south node. And it's important that we don't think of letting go as a negative thing, right? Letting go could be a positive thing. Letting go could be something like letting go of negative emotions, right? Letting go of negative thoughts, letting go of self-limiting beliefs. So it's not always, oh, something in my life's gonna end. No, it could be just something negative, something old, that's something that's run its course, letting itself go, and that leading to a big change, a transformation. So that's what the eclipse is going to bring. And to sum it up in a very concise manner, I would say that this is a big milestone in transformation. So that's how I'd like to end it today. And usually I do the sun signs and the rising signs and where this might be for your particular sun rising sign. But in this videos, I'm just going to keep it to this, and I will see you now in my next video. Hope you have a great day and see you next time. Bye.